Which Bengals do you need to start with no Jamar Chase available to Cincinnati this weekend? How do you handle the Seahawks running back situation? And what are the moves that you need to make to get to the top of the FFPC main event and the Fantasy Pros Championship round leaderboards? Plus, the seventh place team owner in the Fantasy Pros Championship, John Donaldson, swings in to talk to Tavian Wicks, Jake Ferguson, and much more. We've got a great show for you. Ferrell Elliott is here. I'm Eric Balkman. Stick around. Your high-stakes fantasy football hour starts now.
Can't stand the pressure. I've seen greater men than me, the lesser.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now watching the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com with your hosts Eric Balkman and Ferrell Elliott. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for analysis from the best players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here are Eric Balkman and Ferrell Elliott.
Solace in the scripture. Are we not all our father's sons? I became a man. Nobody ever told me what a man was.
Thank you, Rob. Greetings and salutations to all of you Balkaholics and Ferrelliacs. Welcome to the latest episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com, myffpc.com, the Fantasy Football Players Championship. I'm your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman. You may know me from the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown, the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network, and the FFPC. Coming up on tonight's show, Ferrell and I will go hard on the Cardinals pass catchers, sans Marquise Brown, what you should be doing with Austin Eckler in Week 16, and much more. Plus, the seventh place team owner in the Fantasy Pros Championship, John Donaldson, is going to join us in about 13, 14 minutes or so to break down Cortland Sutton's bounce back, Jerick McKinnon, and much more. If you want to connect with us on X, you can do so at hsffhour, at Eric Balkman, and always check out the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship at kffsc.com. You can post on our Facebook page at facebook.com/hsffhour. You can also email the show at highstakesfantasyfootball@gmail.com. If you have any questions for us, send them in now. We'll try to get to all the chat room questions, tweets, and emails in the fantasy feedback segment coming up later on in the show. Thanks to our audio engineer and my best friend Bryce, and our producer and mutual friend Rob. In case you have not noticed, we now have 3 weekly challenges with the FFPC. Now, it's too late for you to join the Thursday one because that locked Thursday night at kickoff. But you can still join the Saturday one or the Sunday one at myffpc.com. There's no draft. There's no salary cap in these. You just choose 10 or 12 players by Saturday's kickoff, which tomorrow I think is at 4:30. Or Sunday's kickoff, which will be at 1 p.m. Either one of those challenges are open for you. Those are the deadlines. Watch the points pile up, and only one player per team. That's the other thing. There's no stacking in this contest. You can't pick 2 players from the same team. You can enter for $35. You can enter for $200 and win up to $2,500. Don't forget that this is the exact same format as the world-famous FFPC Playoff Challenge. We have 2 of them this year. There's 2 great contests with the same awesome format. Again, no draft or salary cap. Just choose the 12 players you want through the duration of the postseason. You don't switch them out after games. Once you lock them in by that first wild card game, they are locked in for the duration of the postseason. You can win $500,000 if you want to enter with the $200 entry fee, or you can win $100,000 if you enter with the $35 entry fee. Again, that is myffpc.com. Remember to like, subscribe, comment, share, and get notified. Share this with your friends, share it with your enemies. So every time we go live, you will be able to tune in for these broadcasts that we have on the FFPC YouTube channel. In case you missed it, we had Darren Armani on Tuesday on the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown, and that was a lot of fun. And we will have another show with another great guest coming up on next Tuesday. I'll tell you who that is at the end of the program. And then in case you missed it last night, we had Pat Fitzmaurice from Fantasy Pros on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show. We cut it up for 2 hours, helping you with Week 16 lineup decisions. That you could check out on any of the FFPC socials and read that, watch that back in case you missed it before. Let's welcome him in right now, ladies and gentlemen. You follow him on the X at KFFSC Official, at J. Ferrell Elliott. And, of course, he is the commissioner of the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship, a contest that you should be playing at kffsc.com. Season's greetings, happy holidays, Merry Christmas to the incomparable Ferrell Elliott. Welcome in, buddy.
Hey man, it is good to see you and thank you. Yeah, I'm having a little Christmas spirit down here in Kentucky, Balky. How about yourself?
Yeah, well, I'm always in the Christmas spirit year round. It's hard not to be, right? Just
I
that's
got
what.
kind of excited when I saw who our guest is tonight, and also how well some of our regular contributors in the chat room are doing in the FFPC main event. And Balky, in Kentucky this week, near and dear to your heart, we actually had at the conclusion of last week a three-way tie at first place. Three teams locked in at 489 points. So it's just fantastic. Yeah, Drew Maselli, one of them, longtime friend of the FFPC. Randy Lavender, who I think you might recall meeting Balky back in the day. Those guys are. I would say we've had the senior most leadership in the KFFSC that we've had in a while. And then Biplab Mandel would be the other one that's tied. And, Biplab, it's not so much age as it is about service, making sure he misses his service updates because, Biplab is put together with spare parts of humans and a computer program. So he'll be all right.
He will be all right.
Those are our three guys.
Always a menace at the top of the leaderboard, whether you're talking KFFSC or the FFPC. He's a tough guy to knock off that perch, is Biplab Mandel. Hey, let's go to the YouTube chat right now. Our resident Ivy League professor joining the conversation. He wants to know which tight end should he go with this week. I'm assuming this is KFFSC because if it was FFPC, I'd say, hey, start them both. But you can't do that. But you probably wouldn't want to do that in KFFSC. Is it Dalton Kincaid, who is against the Los Angeles Chargers, or is it Jake Ferguson, who is at Miami? Ferrell, I lean more towards Ferguson this week. What say you?
I watched Ferguson play football, and I'm going to start him over a lot of tight ends. And next year, I'm going to draft him over a lot of tight ends. And I'm not sure exactly what's going on with some of the Buffalo receivers, but you can see where the offense runs through now. We picked Stephon Diggs to have a tough go this past week, despite the fact that the team did real well. He didn't. I'm ready to put my effort behind Ferguson.
He is a Badger. I'm representing with my Bucky Badger sweatshirt on tonight, so I am a little bit biased if it comes to that, Kern. Just keep that in mind. John Terry, another former guest of the show, friend of the show, he's got a difficult decision to make. He's in sixth place in the main event right now, and he has to flex out one of these guys, Tyjae Spears, Elijah Moore, Devontae Parker, or Rondale Moore. He needs some help. Now, we'll lead into this a little bit by saying Marquise Brown, because of a heel injury, is already out against the Bears. Greg Dortch, also questionable to suit up against Chicago. He's got a shoulder issue as well. Brown really hasn't been healthy for a while, so you'd think Trey McBride is going to be a huge portion of the pass-catching pie in Arizona. Michael Wilson is certainly going to have his say there. So what about Rondale Moore? What about these other guys, Ferrell? If is one of these guys standing out as a guy that John Terry should be flexing this week in the main event championship round?
John Terry, who's the guy you expect that could score the most points in this matchup? That sounds like a real dumb. No. Let's try this again. Who's the guy that you think could have a spike week? Is it Spears? Could he bust a big run? He looks good carrying the ball. He looks good catching the ball. Parker had a 16-point game earlier in the season. That was about his best effort. Is 16 points going to win this for you? I don't know if it is. Rondale Moore. He's been sort of the mystery man when he's been in Arizona, and one of my favorite players from this past draft is finally getting to play a little bit. So for Dynasty and players that are coming here to draft in the Super Bowl Sunday Sweet 16, look, Elijah Higgins at that team, 4 targets and a touchdown, 44 yards last week. So I don't know, buddy. I'm thinking maybe Spears.
I think Spears, if I was playing in a closed 12-team league, I think it'd be Spears for me. But but John Terry is not. He's playing in this national competition. He's trying to beat out hundreds, thousands of teams, whatever it is, in the championship round. Joe Flacco And I know he's in sixth place. So he wants to protect the lead, and Spears might be the choice there. I'm going to stump for Elijah Moore here, and here's why. Since Joe Flacco took over as the Cleveland Browns starting quarterback, he has thrown 44, 45, and 44 passes. His arm is clearly fresh, Ferrell. He hasn't been throwing all season, and now he's throwing it like it's going to go out of style. 254, 311, and 374 yards in those games as well. To me, Elijah Moore represents the biggest chance for a huge week. And I don't think you're sacrificing a lot of floor there by playing Moore over Spears. So while Spears would be my choice in the 12-team league, I think I'm going to say Elijah Moore here is the guy I would start and flex out if I'm John Terry.
If this is a test, John Terry, I'm looking over Balky's shoulder. I'm marking through Spears and writing down Elijah Moore. I'm following Balky. And yeah, I think back to how Flacco has looked throwing the ball. And, you know, what has Flacco got to lose? He's probably having the time of his life. He's seen confidence and perhaps good health is what we're seeing with Flacco. So, okay, yeah, I'm following up with you. But, you know, that's a tough situation. I don't know how in the hell he got those 4 guys on his team anyway. Should have done better in the waiver wire, John Terry. You're better, you know, come on.
Well, again, this is probably a second flex. He probably already locked in Olave and Nakua.
I wonder how many times he's played Elijah Moore this year. That's what I'd like to know.
Yeah, I don't know. That'd be a good question for him. Look at this from Reddy, our man Reddy, in the watching us on YouTube tonight. He's got to start a running back, 3 receivers, and flex 1. This is full PPR here. So between those running backs, I'm going to play Robinson over Barkley and Chandler. He's got to pick 3 of those receivers, so he's got to sit 1. I think I'm leaning towards sitting Ridley there. And then if you got to flex 1, I guess I'd probably be flexing Barkley here. So I'm going to go Robinson, Barkley, Adams, Metcalf, and Higgins. I think that's the way I would roll.
Those are nice problems to have.
Right. Yep. Reddy also has Darren Waller or Dalton Kincaid. Ferrell, I think it's Kincaid. Waller, I just can't trust at this point. You know, coming back first week off of IR. I'm going to go with Kincaid here.
Waller got what last week? 7-8 points.
Did he play last week? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, he played.
All right.
But let's go with Kincaid. Dawson Knox did not contribute last weekend, is my understanding, even though he was active for the game. So yeah, let's go with Kincaid.
Yeah, I'm just seeing it now. 4 for 40 for Darren Waller against the Saints last week. So, and then Kenny Stay Trill, full PPR flex. He's got to start 1 wide receiver, 2 flex here. Higgins, Ayuk, Mixon, Bijan Robinson. I'm playing Ayuk for sure. And I got to sit one of these other guys. I think I'm sitting Higgins here. So Ayuk, Mixon, and Bijan is who I would go with.
You're going to sit Higgins in this situation?
I would sit Higgins, yeah. I mean,
Pace on the bench.
The volume for Mixon, the volume for Robinson, I'm going to go with those 2. And Ayuk, I've been a huge fan of this year. I know he's got the tough matchup on Christmas night against the Baltimore Ravens, but I think he's too talented and too good. And that Reiner's offense is humming too good right now to bench him.
I question Bijan Robinson when we talk about volume because, 60% of the plays doesn't suggest volume, plus musical chairs at quarterback. Higgins, there were 10 or 11 Cincinnati Bengals that caught balls last week, 9 to the tight ends. Balky, you'll be happy to know Irv caught 2. Irv
I'm thrilled. It's a Merry Christmas, Ferrell.
Yeah.
Now it's a Merry Christmas.
The guy I like, Tanner, caught 5. Okay. Yeah, again, those are problems to have, but I'm not going to put Higgins on the bench. I'm going to figure out a way to play Higgins.
Okay. All right. So you're saying that, Barney Newkirk. That's a horrible problem to have. And by the way, John Terry's saying this. He's saying the Philly defense is not great any longer. Yeah. And I would say for fantasy purposes, he's probably right. And I don't know if it coincided with Matt Patricia taking over. I think before Patricia became the defensive coordinator this season, I think they were already having problems. We can see some cracks in the wall there. So I'm with him on that. And then the last one from Reddy, I think we answered this already. Barkley over Chandler. I'm saying yes.
Yeah, you have to, although I really did see what everyone had to. Everyone who was high on Chandler in the preseason, you can certainly see why now.
I think the Barkley. I know, as Hudson just pointed out in the chat, Eagles are still tough against the run, but Barkley's going to catch passes too. So, and I know Chandler will. I know he gets the Lions. I still like Barkley a little bit better than Chandler. It is close though. We talked about Marquise Brown. Let's talk about Jamar Chase here for a second, and I'm going to let you expound on T. Higgins here. Chase is out for the Steelers game this week. He has an AC joint sprain after they won in overtime last week. Ian Rappaport, after the injury, said that week 17 is no sure thing with Jamar Chase, so he may be out for the championship round. He talked about how Jake Browning distributed the football this past week when when Chase was out. Higgins is the guy that you like here, and I'll be honest with you, after listening to you talk about him for a little bit, I think I might have to go back and find a way to get him in my lineup here as well. This is a guy that, absent Jamar Chase, he would be the alpha on this team. And I think somebody's going to pay this guy to be an alpha on their team next year. I had a Dynasty trade offer earlier today. Somebody trying to get T. Higgins off my roster. And I politely told him, like, I think I'm going to see how free agency works out for Higgins. I think he's going to get paid, and he's going to be a number one receiver this weekend, Ferrell.
Yeah. And, he catches, look, he's going into a free agency year. Chase is sidelined. He's got all lights on him. And he's the kind of guy that catches the ball outside of the window. He can help the quarterback. He's got the one thing I like about Higgins, is I've always liked about him, is his strong hands. Once he gets his hands on the ball, and this quarterback's pretty accurate. Mm-hmm. Once he gets his hands on the ball, he's going to make the catch. And, the Cincinnati Bengals passing attack, it looks like, with Chase and Boyd and Higgins, you begin to think, well, this is a very deep pass. Not really. You take any one of those guys. If you took Higgins away, even if you took Boyd away, the players that are stepping up are not quite that equal. So I think a great deal of it goes through Higgins. I think we're beginning to repeat ourselves about it. But you know what? There's guys that have made big moves in fantasy football, relying on Higgins, and have been rewarded. We call up Craig Campbell, talk to him about it.
Mm-hmm.
So let's, in the spirit of Craig Campbell, let's go Higgins.
Higgins is a guy that I think I have him on a few teams, and I'm going to have to find a way to get him in. Now, what about this from Ty R? This is an interesting start-sit question. He's 122nd in the championship round of the FFPC main event. He's got to pick these guys at his second flex, one of these guys. George Pickens, Zay Flowers, and Dontavian Wicks, who we're going to get in with our guest, John Donaldson, just in a couple of minutes here. If Reed is out, he likes Wicks. Now, the problem with this is Pickens plays tomorrow. So you're not going to know if Reed is out or not. I will say that based on what I've read and saw today, I do think Reed is going to find a way to play this week, so I wouldn't count him out. To me, if you can only play one of these guys, Ferrell, it's got to be Zay Flowers. I know it's against the Niners, but it's got to be Flowers here.
We last week gave Zay Flowers enthusiastically, and I think he put up around 2 points this past week.
It's true, yes.
And this answers the question that we asked the same thing about the great veteran Mike Evans last week. Have you seen Mike Evans have 2 bad games in a row? So at least we were right on Evans. And I think we'll be right on Zay in a chaser game. And this is a team. The 49ers are a team that Lamar Jackson's not going to run for 100 yards against. He's not. He's going to have to get rid of the ball. He's going to have to act a little bit more like a quarterback to make sure that body is still standing when the playoffs go. I think that there's a lot of I think there'll be a lot of direction towards getting that ball in Flowers' hands. We might see a couple jet sweeps. We're going to see a lot of very, very short horizontal passing. The vertical game, it seems like there is no vertical game. We had one of the listeners that talked about Beckham last week, and I think he was right about Beckham. Bateman fails to impress me. So I am all in for this game with Zay Flowers, and nobody's asked about Likely, but I will go ahead and say that this player is going to affect the way we look at Andrews next year. And if you have Likely on your roster, there's another guy that I got to figure out a way to get on the field.
Yeah, he is. Well, I'm not going to make the likely pun. I've been doing it all week. I'm not going to do it tonight. So that's my Christmas gift to you. No bad dad joke from Balky about Isaiah Likely. One more question here from Reddy. This is an interesting one. If Trevor Lawrence plays, is Calvin Ridley a better play than Saquon Barkley? Trevor Lawrence did practice today. As far as I can tell, he's still in the protocol, but I think he's trending towards being cleared and going to be playing against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the battle for Central Florida this coming Sunday. If Lawrence plays, I actually do like Ridley a little bit better than Barkley, Ferrell. Do you weigh in on that? Do you like Barkley? Beg your pardon. Do you like Ridley better than Barkley if Lawrence plays?
No, I like Saquon Barkley because of the way he plays football and what he's trying to do. This is an elite player in the National Football League. Ridley is an excellent receiver for a team that has a quarterback that is hurting. And we talk about Joe Flacco being healthy. He looks like a different guy. Lawrence, I mean, he's gritty, he's tough, but he's a different guy too. And you know what? Balky Kid Canada left Jacksonville. It was claimed by the New England Patriots. So his name's Nathan Rourke. So there's a I guess when you say, Lawrence can barely walk and I'm still not on the active roster. So he smells that cooking and moves on. So Lawrence is going to play. Let's hope he stays healthy, gets healthy, and can play at the way that fantasy drafters are counting on him to play. Because if you went into this with Trevor Lawrence as your quarterback, you had to feel very, very good about it.
Right.
And now, so I don't know if you have anyone else to play.
I know we have someone else to bring on the show now. Let's get to our guest. He is a two-time FFPC league winner and sees only 6 teams above him entering Week 16 in his pursuit of $1 million grand prize in the 2023 Fantasy Pros Championship. Please welcome onto the program the Big Bear himself, the 7th place team owner in the FFPC Fantasy Pros Championship. It is the incomparable John Donaldson. John, welcome in. How are you, man?
Gentlemen, thank you very much. I greatly appreciate it. And Ferrell and Eric, it's a real honor and pleasure. So thank you for having me. Happy to be here and, enjoy the show very much. So thank you very much for having me.
Well, thank you. We always read the checks in the mail. We appreciate all the comments right at the top of the show. You're giving us a Christmas gift here with all that. So listen, I want to lead off with your WCOF experience, going back 20 years now. Can you tell us a little bit about what was going on in your life then and what happened at your very first WCOF draft? 2003, right?
Yeah, it was back in 2003. So, I've been doing fantasy football. Well, Ferrell, you may know this, back in since '86 when it was called rotisserie football.
Yes, sir.
Rotisserie. So, it's been a while. So what happened in 2003 was I was in the middle of a divorce, and I knew I had met her in Vegas, and I knew I was going for Week 1 out to Vegas for the NFL season. I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm going to join Wyckoff, and I'm going to figure it out. And I get out there. So I landed and I went to FedEx and I mailed the divorce papers back to her from there since I originally met her there. And then I got into the Wyckoff, for second year. And it was, at first it's a little intimidating. You get there and everyone's got their computers and everything, back then. And so we're sitting there at the table and all of a sudden, they go to announce the winners. We're getting ready to draft the winner from the previous year. And it turns out he's in our league. So he stands up and everyone claps and congratulates him. And now a little more intimidating, if you know what I mean. So then we proceed to go through the start the draft and everything. And got a break after round 9 or 10 or whatever it was. And wasn't really like, okay, his team is okay. He's drafted number 3 or whatever it was. And the guy who was the moderator came up and he said, I really like my team. So I was pretty confident of that. But what was really interesting was, so Week 1 comes around and I'm brand new to the whole transaction thing of $1,000 and all this. And Week 1 happened. And the guy who won the week before or the year before in Week 1 put $980 bid on Anquan Bolden.
Had to have him.
And I didn't know what, I thought you're supposed to save it all over the course of the year. Well, obviously that helped him tremendously. And, I think he made it, number 4 or something like that into the playoffs. But that really opened my eyes to a lot of things. And that was, this guy obviously wanted him. So if you want somebody, go get him.
Yes, sir.
And that, I learned that the hard way a long time ago. You know how it is. You want a guy and he gets picked right before you all the time and all that kind of stuff. And you listen to people, media, us, you guys, you listen, you rate them and all that. But if you want someone, go get them. It doesn't matter if you think someone's saying they're supposed to be drafted in the 5th round. If you want them in the 3rd round, get them. Yeah. Because, a perfect example of that this year is Keenan Allen.
Yeah.
I didn't wait on Keenan Allen most of my leagues. I went and got him. I just had a good feeling with Kellen Moore coming in, and I'm a little bit different than most guys. I have a football background, so I've coached college football, coached high school football, and all that type of stuff. I've worked in the NFL, more sports and marketing, sponsorships, and that. But I just have I use a football perspective from it. So in the beginning of the year, when they come out with everybody writes up like Emil and Bob Harris, and they write up on the coordinators, I read all that. And that to me is very important on how everything is going to transpire. And the one thing that I think everybody this is a little tip that should just kind of reel in for people is whenever you have a new coordinator, new head coach, I'll tell you right now, it's anywhere from 6 to 10 weeks before those guys figure it out on their teams. And it'll take time to kind of get going. So if you look at the new coordinators this year and go back and look, I think you can see it plays out that way. So I kind of use a football perspective when I do a lot of my stuff. And that's kind of my unique how I go after it.
And Bear, you're exactly right. That's why we used to have a 6-game preseason. Remember that? That's why and now you have a 3-game preseason. And you have limited practices, and you're exactly right. I talk to players around the NFL. They're getting ready to start the season. How are you going to look? Well, we're going to be okay if the young guys know where to line up. Well, and we had that. Yeah, you got to know where to line up, and you're exactly right. I talk to players all the time, and in team owners and the KFFSC, the FFPC, and you want to talk to me about players from Carolina, you want to talk to me about players from the Chargers. What about some of these teams that have the finest athletes, the finest players, and a coaching staff that's been locked up solid for 4 or 5 years? And you did 49ers, you talk about going to get players. Ayuk, Bucky, where could you get him?
Right. Are you talking about in the
draft? In this past draft, where could you get
Ayuk?
He went 7 and 8.
Yeah,
I sit around and watched many drafts come along with Christian McCaffrey going 4, 5, 6. It's hard to believe some of the things that we saw in the drafts. And
they're just back to the media kind of saying these guys are the best. And hey, Justin Jefferson but is he really number 1 in a fantasy football draft? Now, granted, if he has a full year, but he didn't have a full year, and we all know how that goes. But getting back, Ferrell, what you just said, Eric and I know better than anybody. Week 1, they come in the past couple of years. Aaron Rodgers, he never started well. I mean, he was week 3, week 4 before things got going. I can remember when they played the New Orleans Saints and they got smoked 31-3
in Jacksonville too. Like it wasn't even at New Orleans.
A lot of these guys, it's it's just. So you're right on the whole preseason thing. So you got to be careful on that stuff. And, again, we all draft number 1. We all think our guys are going to, take off and stuff like that. The one thing I learned I used a long time ago is a little theory of I call it the Larry Fitzgerald and Deshaun Jackson. Who do you want? Do you want more explosive or do you want 15 points a game?
Right.
And, now if you have a couple Larry Fitzgeralds, then you go after the Deshaun Jackson. But you got to build your team that way, right? And kind of get those solid guys, and then you got to take your shots with a few guys that are above and beyond that are going to get you those 35-point games.
And I'm waiting for somebody in the chat room to say, "Who in the hell is Larry Fitzgerald?" You know,
Wait. How about Bobby Abear, Roger Craig, and
yeah. No shit. Hey, come on. Bobby Abear.
Tom Rathman. I'm trying to think of all the other great Niners on that. Like it was Rice and Taylor, Rathman, Roger Craig, Joe Montana, Steve Young. I mean that was a fantasy offense, right?
So boys that can play football.
How about the tight end? I mean, you kept going. All those guys right down the road. I mean, So I mean, those were truly the days. I mean, you go the Christian Okoyos and all those guys. You know, I mean, it's just kind of fun to reminisce. And I used to work for the Denver Broncos for a short period of time, and we had a couple drafts and we had some interns. And so I said, I was back in, doing the drafts way back in the early 80s. And so I go, I'll bring in my roster. So I bring it in and it's typed and it's all stapled together. And one of the interns, it was a girl. She goes, "What's that?" And I go, "What do you mean, what's that?" "Well, how did they do that?" I go, "A typewriter." She goes, "What's that?" So it's like, oh wow, I'm showing my age here.
Right.
But hey, we all know we have good buddies through the years, and fantasy football keeps us all together. We all have friends that we haven't even met yet, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just kind of one of those deals too. So it's a community, it's a fraternity, and it's a joy to be part of it. I'll be honest with you.
I agree.
I have to say this too. That divorce story reminds me, because my wife watches these shows every now and then. And in case she's watching, I want to wish her a happy anniversary tonight. The divorce story reminds me of that. So happy anniversary, honey. I'll be home soon. But
on top of that, happy belated birthday to you. So I know you had it about 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, it was about 3 weeks or so ago.
So happy belated.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
You've already shared with us tonight, John, that you worked as a high school coach, a college football coach. You worked in the NFL for the Broncos. What are you doing nowadays when you're not hanging around the top of the leaderboard of the Fantasy Pros Championship?
Well, everyone knows if you work in sports, you kind of travel the country, right? I mean, you go all over the place. And the story about me, it's kind of funny, is I moved to Colorado in 98, and 5 different times I moved away, and right up until 2014. And I took my niece to dinner, and I said, I got some bad news. And her name is Lauren. And she goes, "Why? What's going on?" I said, "Well, I'm moving to Florida." And without even missing a beat, because this was the 5th time, she goes, "That's okay. You'll be back." So 2 years later, I was back, and I started my own construction company. It's called Big Bear Deck Company, so hence the Big Bear.
Mm-hmm.
And I have Big Bear contractors. So we do high-end decks and custom decks, and then we're doing a lot of different Big Bear contractors, is like interior or like some buildings and things of that nature, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. Metal buildings, all that type of stuff. So I'm very fortunate. One of my guys, my main guy, Jason, he's in a couple Dynasty leagues. So we try to talk about a lot of the future stuff, which is great, because you know how Dynasty leagues are. I mean,
mm-hmm.
Honestly, I know you're thinking T. Higgins, right? Well, trade him for a Jaleel McLaughlin or something like that, right? I mean, it's one of those things to me that's, you got to find those gems, right, in the Dynasty. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, and that's, you got to have the forward thinking. That's what's beautiful about the Dynasty leagues. That's a long time ago. Why I got into this is that
the Bear reminds me of our boys from Kentucky, Cox and Hawley,
mm-hmm.
because he's sitting right here at 7th place in the FFPC, and he's talking about Dynasty and building stuff and going to Florida. He's not giving anything up. I want you to give one thing up to me, because those guys that meandered over from the Wyckoff, probably waiting on their check. They came on over. And they sit down next to you, and they said, "I know that guy from my Wyckoff days, and he hadn't learned a damn thing. He's waiting till the 9th round in the FFPC to draft a tight end, and then he ends up with Njoku." And I'm going to say, just how in the hell did you figure out a way to get into 7th place by drafting Njoku in the 9th round? And do you always do crazy ass shit like that? Things like that?
Ferrell, you'll understand this better than anybody. 10 years prior, I drafted Antonio Gates in the 15th round.
No, I love that. I love that. That's
right? You got to find the hidden gems. So
I agree.
I'll be honest. And the other thing with that league, you say one of my best, transactions of, for some reason, I think it was going on a buy and the guy dropped Jay Ferguson.
Oh yeah.
So there was a perfect example of, he's on my team.
No, I'm going to look at your waiver wires and ask you.
Right, and look at
Balky's got a Packer he wants to ask you about. Balky always gets all the Packers.
It's sort of.
I don't even know who the Packer players are.
Unfortunately, it's not the Indianapolis Colts with Peyton Manning.
Do they still have Carroll Dale, Balky?
No, Carroll Dale not on the team anymore. Okay. No more Carroll Dale. But let me ask you this, John. Right now you have Dontavian Wicks, or at least when I looked at your lineup earlier this morning, you had Dontavian Wicks in your starting lineup. Jaden Reed is questionable. Christian Watson doubtful. Is Wicks going to stay in your starting lineup this week?
Well, here's the thing. I believe in two things. One from early on and one right now. One early on is draft good players on good teams with great offenses. I mean, that's. When it comes down to it, and unfortunately, and this isn't a knock on any Bear fans, but it kind of is. I wasn't drafting any Bears this year. It just wasn't. Draft the Chargers, draft the 49ers, draft go right down the list, Cowboys and all that. But Dontavian Wicks, so that's kind of my theory when I start drafting. But Dontavian Wicks is absolutely staying in my lineup the rest of the way, and the reason is this. I'm sure Eric, you know this of all. I call him the Isaiah Pacheco of the wide receivers. This guy he's different. You get the ball in his hands, he's not coming down.
Mm-hmm.
And with, Jaden Reed's great, okay? But being a Packer fan, you and I questioned the 2-point conversion when they ran the ball to him, running around the corner.
Not a good call.
We're going, what is he doing? And he's going to be hurt. He's going to be banged up a little bit this week. I love the guy. Don't get me wrong. But Dontavian Wicks, he brings a different – so if you do, every team, everybody who has a favorite team with us, the Packers, Browns, Denver Broncos, just go right down the list. They hear the coach talk about people in the beginning of the year, right? Way back. And LaFleur was talking about Wicks.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's when you hear that. Now, he stepped into Lazard's place. So he's the guy who's running. He's going to be the blocking guy. So, he's going to take over that position. Well, he's going to be in the lineup. So for me, I don't care if Christian Watson comes back. Dontavian Wicks is in the lineup. And as you guys know, and we all know this, and the guys who've been near the top for years and all this type of stuff. Right now, all of us, we all have certain players why we're at the top, right? McCaffrey, CeeDee Lamb, you go right down the list, right? You got to have the one guy or two guys that is not going to be in other guys' lineups that you have a chance. You got to take that risk to kind of get above everybody else and accumulate. And it's like we all know, it's not the 15 points he scores. It's really over 30 because those other people don't have him in there.
The outlier, and the difference maker. Now, I'll say something about the Green Bay Packers. Ever since Balky took to the air in Wisconsin, their drafting has improved mightily. I can't probably say, Balky, the investigative reporter that he is bringing the heat. And but something's happening over there, so I'm going to give credit to Balky. But and we gave credit to the quarterback. We liked the quarterback. I'm looking at your waiver wire, and now I see where you're making your big effort on this team. Jordan Love, which I'd be curious how often you've used him. We've been behind him on the show. I took a back seat to Ferguson and let Balky run with it, and he was right on Ferguson. More dead center, Balky, I think, than any player we talked about this year. And as soon as I saw the ball come off Brandon Aubrey's foot, I dropped every kicker, even Tucker. I dropped every kicker I could to put
Aubrey,
put the Dallas kicker on my team. So Aubrey is and he rewards us 2 weeks ago with 24 points. So the waiver wire You may be getting it done at the draft, but the waiver wire has been very, very good to you this year with those players. Congratulations.
Thank you. And we all know that that's part of it. You have to do that. You have to mind that. There's a reason why we always say draft kickers last. Like we all know that. I mean, there's no reason to have that guy, on there. And defenses, I think there's a legitimate claim not to pick them 12, but certainly to pick them 13 or like 14, 15, 16 if you really like somebody like Dallas this year. I mean, that's a great pick, but from Jordan Love's perspective, for me was I had Herbert by himself for like 3 weeks. And then I'm coming up and I'm going, yeah, okay, like this isn't going to work if we go in. I mean, I got to have some sort of backup. And I don't know, some guy dropped Love. And I'm like, you know what? He's right on that cusp of, I know he wasn't playing well, but we know, Eric, that he wasn't terrible.
Right.
I mean, some of the statistics might not have been great, but when he's got the longest downfield throws, they're just not catching them. And we know how often Watson drops them.
Yeah.
You're going like, hey, there's something going on here that's pretty good. And so I got to be honest, we all know, like, hey, we all hope that I'd love to finish first and all that type of stuff. We know it's a pipe dream and all that type of stuff, but you got to position yourself week 1. Week 2 is setup, right? You got to be somewhere near the top, and then week 3 is, to me, you got to take that shot with a player or two that either people don't have or people aren't going to play.
Yeah. And
you might roll craps, but at the same time, you might hit the hard 8. And, so that's kind of where it's at on that. And you kind of, in my belief, that's kind of where I am. So I'm hoping for the setup this week, and I can kind of stick around up there and then roll the hard 8 on the last week of the season.
Let's talk about Josh Palmer here. Is he that type of guy? Because he came back off IR, 4 catches, 113 yards and a touchdown his first game back. That was with Easton Stick. Obviously, no Justin Herbert. How relevant is he going to be over these next couple of weeks?
Not only is he relevant, to me, he's going to be that guy that is easily 16 to 25 points the rest of the year. And, you look at it, okay, Easton Sticks, whatever. He's not, he's okay. He's good. But their offense didn't change the whole year. So if they can just kind of move the ball a little bit, I think the Raiders game was a little bit of an anomaly, right? I mean,
they throw the game out.
So they're still going to, be okay. But I think we all know they're not playing Keenan Allen the rest of the year. So they got to go to somebody, so, and I think Eckler too will have a better end of the year than he's been having, to be honest with you. But Palmer is, he's in my lineup if I can. I got a couple decisions in one league with him and Jonathan Taylor and Wicks, and I'm like, all right, where do I go here? That kind of a thing. So I mean, it's a tough issue, but in the top league for me, I have Keenan Allen, so I was hoping he'd come back, but probably not.
Easton Stick, after had to look at what happened in the Raiders game, and then come back to the facility and realize, hey, I still got a job. So I can't get any worse. It's only going to get better for him. Here's a question. With your background in coaching, this is perfect. Question for you. You take a look at Jerick McKinnon and all he's done, and he comes out, and when they call on him, he comes out, and it's impressive. And it always seems to be in the last quarter of the season, and you expect him to be more of a guy the next year. And he disappears into a rotation where he appears to be the last in the rotation. And he's done it again. As a coach, how do you put that type of production and let Isaiah Pacheco return to his normal volume? Or do you say, look, we're Pacheco's coming back. Let's play them both. Let's get how do you handle that, and what do you think the Chiefs will do with it? Because this is a big thing. Pacheco's going to be a key player.
No question. But it's a matchup thing. You come back with Pacheco. I mean, you got to have when you're. There's two things. I grew up way back under, watching Purcell's and certainly Lombardi and all that type of stuff. And why the Chiefs haven't run the ball a little bit more? They got a great offense, and Andy Reid's awesome. But when Pacheco's running well, even when they don't have anybody, I made huge mistakes on Tony this year. But Pacheco is, he's a great running back, and he gets the points. So I believe he will come back and get his points. But McKinnon is pure matchup, and you have to look at when you look at these things, like the Patriots, they really aren't that great against the running back, against a guy going in the flat and things of that nature, So to me, you have to look at the matchup in McKinnon. I don't think you can just throw him out. Obviously, last week with Pacheco being out, if you're in a bind, McKinnon was an easy start. I started McKinnon earlier in the year because of the matchup, and that's when he scored his lone touchdown. So you just have to really kind of dig deeper. And I think what happens, and this is what I tell a lot of the guys, specifically my guy Jason. He's only 29, but when you look at fantasy football and you do all this, and I look at it from a coaching perspective all the time. I really do. But when you look at fantasy football and you think something's going to happen and you really believe it, and all these guys are giving you all this information. Well, that's great. But you still have to make the decision. And when you make the decision, you got to live with it. And that comes down to coaching, and it comes down to your question about should we play Pacheco? Should we put in McKinnon, and how does he match up against the outside linebackers, on running your rub routes and things of that nature? And so, that comes down to that. But I mean, honestly, what happens a lot of times in fantasy football is guys listen to the guys on the internet and read and all this type of stuff, and then they make a decision based on that instead of what they believe
and what they see and what they see. When fantasy players start talking to me about how players move and how excited they are, the physicality and things like that, I say, well, hell, he's going to have one of his better years he's ever had, especially if the guy's good in all other aspects of the game. Because when they start talking about player movement traits and characteristics, I say this guy's really getting it.
The other thing is that I think we all know, being a little bit older, is, and specifically from the year before, but certainly the past week, do not base their performance on starting next week on what happened last week.
Yep.
You literally have to have, turn that one off and say,
we're trying to push it out there, saying every week is a new season.
It really is. And if you don't look at it like that, and that's coaching too. So you really have to look at each week as brand new, even though it's influenced a little bit by what happened the week before, right? I mean, and let's talk to the Gabe Davis owners, right? I mean, how many times has he thrown a donut this year, right? But, you come down to it this year, right now, and, he's going against the 30th ranked defense, or, pass defense for sure. So should you? I don't know. I mean, he hasn't really, done anything, but honestly, he could hang a 20 spot in our game.
Sure.
What about John? It's something that a lot of people are facing this week. Keaton Mitchell, obviously, we hope he makes a full recovery from that nasty knee injury. But the fact of the matter is, he's not going to be gumming up the works in the Ravens backfield anymore. It's going to be Justice Hill. It's going to be Gus Edwards. What kind of numbers do you think Gus Edwards puts up this week against the Niners in San Francisco?
I think Gus Edwards is a solid play, and here's why. You go back and look at everybody who's done well against 49ers, and they've been guys inside the tackle. And honestly, where does Gus Edwards live? He lives inside. And I think personally Gus Edwards will do really well. Now, and I say that let me preference that by, let's say he has a 12 to 18 point week, somewhere in there. I really do. I think he'll have a solid week, even though Mitchell's dynamic. There's no question about it. I mean, I made my mistake this year, and I know a lot of guys are with me. I drafted J.K. Dobbins in probably 80% of my leagues.
Wow.
And I missed, but on the flip side of that, I probably drafted Mostert in 70% of my leagues. So I got lucky, you know what I mean, on that side of it. So, but Ravens, as great as Lamar Jackson is and all that, And, you don't base Zay Flowers on last week by any means. This week is a whole new week, and I do like Isaiah Likely. But I do think Gus Edwards will have a solid week. They can't win the game without running the ball. There's no way. They're going to play defense for sure. And the old adage, defense wins championships, but they got to be able to run the ball to keep the 49ers, off the field. And so I think Gus Edwards is a big part of the game plan this week.
When we were kids, the family would always save the biggest gift for last, and I think that's where we are with Christmas weekend football, because this Niner Ravens, that's the big gift of the weekend.
It really is. I mean,
it's just a prelude to that. What's your toughest decision you've got to make this week?
Well, I don't really like him, but I played him last week, and that's Terry McLaurin, and he had a great week. So obviously the first thought is play him in this week, right?
Yeah.
But he's playing the Jets.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's not a good matchup. So that's why I was hoping Keenan Allen would come back. You know what I mean? So, I literally on my team, and I look at the team that's number 7, and you look at it. If you look at it, you're going, yeah, that's okay. There's nothing special about it. But the guy's produced. But I think I really will switch out McLaurin for Gabe Davis. I think Gabe Davis will go in, and because I don't want McLaurin going against Sauce Gardner. I'll tell you, Robert Saleh, great. He's a good head coach, but he's a better defense coordinator.
Right.
And the Jets are playing well defensively, and I just think that one itself is really, really a tough matchup for them. And, the Jets, they're going to want to end on a good note, right? I mean, Rodgers is there kind of pumping them up and all that type of stuff. There's a lot of good energy in the Jets camp.
I agree.
And so that I don't think a lot of people see that part of it. So I do think the Jets will play really well this week. And I'm scared for McLaurin. I really am. I like him, but I don't know if I can leave him in the starting lineup.
Yeah, it would be tough. It's a tough sell. It's a very tough sell. Now, John, we do have a couple of emails from you. I think you just answered one. Al in New York against the Chargers this week, Khalil Shakir or Gabe Davis. You're saying Davis over Shakir then, right?
I think it's a toss-up, but I do like Davis. He's one of those guys that we all know, 2 years ago, right? I mean, he had 4 touchdowns and 200 yards. I mean, there's a real good chance that, the Bills need to win. Chargers are lost. I mean, the scary part there is that game could be, 30-0 in the first half.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's a great point. The other email we have, Ron in Midlands, Texas. Can you explain how Cortland Sutton has had such a great bounce back season? Thank you, John. Thank you for the email, Ron. We appreciate you. Cortland Sutton, I mean, this is right your neck of the woods. How did he put this campaign together this year, John? 2 words, Sean Payton.
Cortland Sutton is Michael Thomas. It's really obvious, and everyone likes Jerry Jeudy. I don't know that the guy will be there next year. Everyone says he's a great route runner coming out of college and all that type of stuff, and might have been, but in fairness to Jeudy, he came into a new offense again this year. But Cortland Sutton, he meshes with Sean Payton, and right when the first 3 happened, or the first 2 touchdowns happened, he never left my starting lineup after that. I know he had a bad week, 1 week where he had 10 points or 6 points or something. But when you look at that matchup, you look at not the matchup. When you look at the relationship with Wilson and Sutton, and then Sean Payton, as much as Sean Payton he runs the ball, we all know that now. He wants to run the football, but it's a play action situation there, and Cortland Sutton is excelling in that situation. Wait till Dulcich, the tight end, comes back. Once he's back, they're going to be dangerous. With him splitting the seam, I'm telling you, they're itching for this guy to come back. So,
and when you talk about coordinators, a simple plan that should be executed, and I don't think he ever should have left the Chargers, and that's Lombardi. And when you put Lombardi in that room, the DC or as the OC over at Denver, I think that enhanced a lot of situations.
For me personally, and I worked in a internet kind of marketing things right after the Broncos out in San Diego, so I got to know a lot of the Charger guys,
Mm.
and so I'm a little partial to the Chargers a little bit. I know some of the guys there, but the one thing that I would love to see personally for them is Dan Quinn go to the Chargers, and then I think he would keep Kellen Moore. Now the question is, does Dan Quinn want to, work for Spanos's, that kind of thing. So, it's that always comes in because we always get the thing. Why didn't Kyle Shanahan come to Denver? Well, the Broncos didn't want him. It's not that. I think Mike Shanahan was in his ear going, that ownership group is a mess. You don't want any part of that, and so just find out. And when the 49ers came along, because there's a lot of Bronco fans that say he should be here. Why didn't they go after him? Behind the scenes aspect of that is he probably didn't want to be here because the ownership group wasn't set in place yet. Yeah. So I think it's going to be, we all know it's going to be an interesting last couple of weeks. So I certainly hope I can stay near the top of the board. So we'll see what happens. But there's, we still got a lot of decisions to make here. So if you come up with any miracle decisions and you really know something inside information, send it my way, would you?
We're betting on you to hit the hard 8, Big Bear. We're betting on you to hit
the hard 8 to come through. Let me tell you.
We might refer to the hard 8 from now on as the Big Bear.
Big Bear's hard 8. Big Bear's hard 8. I love it.
$25 Big Bear.
Ferrell, fresh out of emails, MI, would you like to ask John one final question?
Oh, I got about a million questions that I would like to ask. And you really did shine a light on a few things. Help the guys this week understand someone that they should get in the lineups. We can't use anybody we've already talked about. Talk to them about someone that you think is not going to deliver. You're a good matchup guy, so talk about a guy that's in a matchup that he just cannot convert. Well, I've got a couple guys in mind, but I'd rather hear yours.
Let me start with one that you should have in your lineup, and Eric will probably agree with me on this, but he'll probably not be happy like me, but put Chuba Hubbard in your lineup.
Yeah. Yes. I'm on board. I'm on board.
I mean, sure. Chuba Hubbard is, if they're going to they're going to compete, but if he's going to do well. I mean, he's going to, if he gets a touchdown, he's a 20, 22 point guy easy. And against the Packers. And, again, unless the Packers were healthy defensively, that would change things. But I think Chuba Hubbard
change things for me. I'm telling you, that defense that they roll out there every week, they are just asking to get killed on the ground. And Hubbard has been able to do this against good defenses. So I think he has a big week.
Real quick, Eric, I'm a defensive coach, so I personally love the 13-10 games. I'm a 13. I love those games, and I can't agree with you more. And we grew up in the real basic side of things when we were in college. We had what was called force, secondary force, fill, wind back, and play action. Had to happen on both sides of the ball. I haven't seen it on one side of the weak side at all the whole year for the Packers. And I'm like, where are these guys? And it's a simple concept that we teach not only in college, but certainly in high school, that there's got to be these guys have to have plays in case the play goes either way every single time. The Packers don't have that. And that I struggle with that. But, hey, I mean, we all know that personally, I don't think the guy's going to be around next year. So, I mean, unfortunately for him, it comes down to, we're going to be – I think I don't know how LaFleur keeps the guy. But, again, we'll find out. As for one guy probably not to have in your lineup, this might come as a little bit of a surprise because I don't know. I know they play on, I think it's Monday night. I'm not sure. I don't know if you put Jacoby Myers in your lineup. We all know that he struggled the past couple of weeks, and they're probably going to take away Devontae Adams. But I don't know that I would risk him against the Chiefs. The Chiefs are really balanced in the secondary, and we all say that, right? And all of a sudden the guy goes off and has 30 points. But yeah. I really think the Chiefs, they're playing for something. It's coming down to it. They got to really shut everybody down. Devontae Adams is going to get his 8 catches for 70 yards, and I think they, if I was defense coordinator there, I'd take away everybody, let Adams get whatever he is, because one guy is not going to beat you.
And the Raiders want to see a little more Trey Tucker, who shot, and the tight end.
That's exactly
the tight end was coming alive there. So
that's exactly right. That's exactly
right. That's a good one.
So
that is a good one for sure. And I will say that Trey Tucker wasn't even on my radar until last week, and now I'm looking at him for dynasty purposes.
Absolutely,
too. We'll see what happens with him. John, listen, this has been so much fun. I apologize we kept you a little bit later, but so thankful for all the entertainment and the information that you could bring to our viewers and to me and Ferrell tonight too.
Right.
7th place in the Fantasy Pros Championship. Hit that hard 8, baby, and we'll have you back on
Thanks,
when you win the $1 million again.
You guys are a world of information to all of us, and keep up the phenomenal work. We really appreciate having this type of feedback back and forth, and having people on that can give this type of information. And you guys have a platform to deliver that, and it's been phenomenal. So great job, and kudos to you guys. Congrats. And thank you very much. Merry Christmas to you and all your families and all the listeners. And we really appreciate it. And I look forward to, meeting you guys in the future.
Absolutely. Merry Christmas to you, John. Right. Be good. Enjoy week 16, dude.
Yep. And let's root for that hard 8.
Hard 8, baby. The big bear hard 8. Let's come.
All right, guys.
Very good one, dude. Thank you. That is John Donaldson, the 7th place team owner in the Fantasy Pros Championship. Heading into week 16, what a treat it was to have him on. And pick his brain. And certainly anytime you get a guy that not only is this high up on the leaderboard, Ferrell, but has a football background, but we could have done this for 3 or 4 hours.
Well, you can tell he loves football. And he reminds me of the kind of guy, when I was especially getting my start as a player agent, I'd look down at the lobby bar and I'd see a bunch of old heads down there that, were lining up for the late night happy hour. And I would go down and I cut my teeth on learning football between 10 p.m. and 1 a.m., with guys like him sitting around the bar telling stories. And it's a great way to realize that when you have a guy with that background coming in and playing fantasy football, and he was he should be proud of his marketing department work with NFL teams, because that's the one job that if you're good at, you really keep. The head coach has got to have a winning record and maybe get in the playoffs a few times. You just have to keep selling. Yep. And I think Big Bear could probably sell. All right.
I think he could too.
That's what I'm thinking.
No question. I think we're going to put a cap on the show tonight because we're a little bit past 10 o'clock. And it is my anniversary, so I should be getting home here shortly. But
happy anniversary.
Thank you, Ferrell. I appreciate it. I will say that everybody needs to be going to kffsc.com. Remind me again, is that the place that you want to go in order to get, I don't want to say like verify or anything, but confirm their appearance at the Super Sunday party?
Right. The party and draft of 96 spots. We've got about 30 remaining. We also have big payback, which is $1,000 entry fee. There, the Super Sunday is $300. Come and play as much as you want, as little as you want. Thanks for outreach of our old pal Chuck Root, who joined 3 teams. He's the latest guy to jump in. We're going to have a sellout, and we're going to have it quickly, Balky, so I want you to get your teams.
Yep.
But, yeah, it's a great way to get started with us. And, if demand exists, we'll add not within the umbrella of the Sweet 16, because that's limited to 96 teams, $300 entry, $10,000 grand prize, but we will have a big payback, and perhaps we'll add a couple of ancillaries if we get a few more people down there that want to draft. But it's a great place to come and be for the game.
I'm on it right now. kffsc.com. Click on the Super Sunday Sweet 16s. Click on the Super Sunday Big Payback if you want to get registered for those. Again, kffsc.com is where to go. My goodness, what a show. Merry Christmas to you, my friend. Very thankful that you have been my co-pilot on this journey all season long. And we got some big prizes to award, not only in the KFFSC, but in the FFPC in the next coming weeks. And hopefully we'll get some of these winners on the show tonight, on the show in the coming weeks to talk all about it. Ferrell, have a great holiday season. We'll do this again next Friday.
See you then, buddy.
You got it. Ferrell Elliott, the definitive commissioner of fantasy football. KFFSC.com is where you want to go for that. That will complete tonight's festivities. I want to give a shout out to John Donaldson, Ferrell Elliott, the FFPC, Rob, Bryce, and of course, each and every one of you for hanging out and watching tonight. We will be back live at 10 o'clock Eastern time next Friday with another special guest. You can check out, in case you missed it, Tuesday's RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown with 18-time FFPC champion and FantasyMojo.com owner Darren Armani. The show will return live this Tuesday night with the 14th place team owner in the FantasyPros Championship, a guy who's won countless leagues in not only the FFPC, but the KFFSC as well, and that is Brad Cruz. Will be my guest, 10 o'clock on the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown on Tuesday night. You can check out the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network on any of the FFPC socials in case you missed last night's show. 2 full hours with Fantasy Pros, Pat Fitzmaurice, a really fun time with him. And then this coming Thursday, we're going to keep it in the Fantasy Pros family. Nate Polvolt will be my guest co-host for the show. That starts Thursday at 7 o'clock, leads right into Thursday Night Football. Go to myffpc.com to play in the FFPC weekly challenges. You can play in the Saturday challenge, the Sunday challenge. Remember, Saturday locks at 4:30 tomorrow. Sundays will lock at 1 p.m. You can play with 10 players or 12 players if you want to play with kickers and defenses. Get those lineups in. Only 1 player per team. Watch the points pile up. $35 to enter or $200 to enter, and you can win up to $2,500. The FFPC playoff challenges are also here at myffpc.com. No draft or salary cap there. You're going to choose your 12 players that you want for the remainder of the postseason or the start of the postseason all the way through the end of it. You can't change them during it. It's literally a set it and forget it. 12 players, watch them ride throughout the playoffs. You want to enter for $200, you can take a shot at a $500,000 grand prize. You can enter for $35 to try to win a $100,000 grand prize as well. That's all at myffpc.com. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment on the video, share it with your friends, share it with your enemies, and click the notification bell so you get notified every time we go live. The next time will be Tuesday night at 10 o'clock Eastern with Brad Cruz and myself. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. We'll do it again next week. But for now, your weekend starts now.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com. It was broadcast live and was watched around the world. Balky and Ferrell will be back next week with more analysis, more interviews, and more advice from guests much smarter than they are. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk with you again next week.
Just a final courtesy, I want to remind everybody that we have a 4:30 kickoff tomorrow. So make sure you're getting those lineups in early for Week 16. 2 games tomorrow night. One is going to be on Peacock, the Saturday night game. But make sure you get your lineups in for that, and then get them get those players lined up for 1 o'clock on Sunday. Happy holidays, everybody. Merry Christmas, and may the ball bounce your way this weekend. We'll talk with you a week from today. Thanks so much.